Hello everyone, I am PickTalk. Please turn off the lights, lie in bed, tuck in the quilt, and let's start today's story. A strange encounter with a snake. This story comes from a bizarre experience my Chongqing colleague had when he was a child. Back then, my second aunt thought that if I studied near her home, she could keep an eye on me, so she transferred me to a school near Deping in Chongqing. This whole thing starts with my biology teacher, Teacher Gong. She was a local from Chongqing, very short, and looked like an old lady. She wasn't exactly good looking, and she always frowned, looking really stern. She taught biology, and was extremely capable and strict, both in class and with students. But there was one thing I never really understood. She could be quite ruthless. She loved doing biological research, and in her free time, she'd take us to a special little lab next to her office after class. The school had somehow given her this space just for her experiments. Inside, there were dissected frogs and other animal specimens. One day after class, she got excited and said, "Come on, students. The teacher will take you to meet a guest from far away." We followed her in and were shocked. There was a huge glass jar with a thick glass lid, filled with cloudy liquid. She said it was formalin, and inside, something was swimming around. Then she said she was going to open the lid to show us. We all backed away in fear. She put on some gloves, reached in, and suddenly pulled the thing out. It was a snake. In the city, you rarely see a snake that big, at least 2 meters, almost 3 meters long, with a flat head and thick scales. She just wrapped it around her hand. Even though she was tiny, barely over 1.5 meters, her grip was incredibly strong. She held the snake tightly by the neck, like coiling a rope. She even showed off, saying, "Look, this snake came into my office by itself. It's not my fault." We said, "Teacher, the snake is still alive. Why did you put it in there?" She replied, "I need to observe it for a while. Its venom is very useful." I felt really sorry for the snake, being soaked alive in that jar. After Teacher Gong left for her next class, and the other students had scattered, I couldn't stop thinking about it. For some reason, I found myself walking back to her room. The door wasn't locked. I went in and saw the snake still swimming in the jar, looking like it was about to die. My heart softened, and I thought about letting it go secretly. The teacher would never know who did it. I grabbed a ruler, lifted the lid, stood far away, and used the ruler to pull the snake out, guiding it toward the window. The snake slithered out along the ruler, looked back at me for a moment, then disappeared into the bushes. I quickly put the lid back on, wiped up the spilled formalin, and ran away like a thief. In the afternoon, Teacher Gong looked very unhappy and said, "My snake is gone. Did one of you naughty students let it out?" My heart was pounding, and I didn't dare say a word. Luckily, there were no cameras there, so she never knew it was me. But a few days later, strange things started happening. I was living at my grandmother's house in a room by myself, in Chongqing. We used brown mats on the bed, covered with bamboo mats. I kept feeling something cold pressing against my back. At first, I thought it was something under the mat and didn't pay much attention. After about 3 days, the cold feeling became stronger. I told my grandmother, "Grandma, there seems to be something under my bed pressing against my back. It's really cold." She lifted the bamboo mat and was shocked to see a snake, exactly the same one I had set free. My home was quite far from school, a 20-minute walk at least. I wondered how the snake could have found me, and it was coiled up like a mosquito coil. Grandma said, "If a snake has come into the house, there must be a reason." She lit some incense and muttered something, basically telling the snake that we had no grudges and asking it to protect the family from harm. After she finished, the snake raised its head, didn't flick its tongue, just shook its head twice, then slid off the bed, crawled across the floor to the window, and jumped from the 3rd floor onto a nearby tree, coiled around it, and disappeared. About a week later, a terrible tragedy happened in Teacher Gong's family. Her daughter was in my class, and was the class monitor. I used to joke around and call her Go Jimu Mei, which made her very angry. She said she was Chinese, and told me not to call her that. Once, when I was talking to her, I turned around and accidentally knocked her pen off the triangular flower stand. She got really mad, picked it up, and rubbed it on my clothes, making them dirty. I held back and didn't say anything. That evening, as I was walking home, I suddenly heard a voice in my ear. It was a man's voice, about 40 years old, thin, with long straight hair, wearing blackish blue clothes. He said, "Don't let her off." I was shocked and asked, "Who are you?" He replied, "I'm the snake that came to your house." I asked again, "Why shouldn't we let them off?" He said, "Their family and I have old grudges. Her mother caught me. If you hadn't set me free, I would have died." Before he could finish, my family knocked on the door, and the voice disappeared. During evening self-study, I noticed that Teacher Gong's daughter wasn't there. I asked Teacher Gong, and she glared at me, saying the child had an emergency and would be back in a few days. Those 2 days, a disaster struck their family. Teacher Gong's husband worked in a factory checking lathes. His sleeve got caught in a lathe, and he was crushed to death. Teacher Gong cried uncontrollably. When they appeared at school later, none of us dared to go up and talk to them, afraid of reminding them of their pain. Then the snake's voice spoke again in my ear. "He deserved it." I said, "How can you say that? I feel really bad about it. Teacher Gong didn't kill you." He suddenly spoke in a Nanjing accent. "Do you know what they did to me during the Nanjing massacre? Her husband, and her daughter, they were all Japanese. They cut me into pieces. I've been waiting for revenge. I finally got a chance to come back in this life, and they caught me again. Fortunately, you saved me." Only then did I understand the enmity between them. I asked what I should do. He said, "Don't worry about it. Tomorrow, go outside the school, past the vegetable market, to a dentist surnamed Huang. There's a pomegranate tree in his yard, and under it, there's a jar. I've left 2 things there for you. Take them home, sell one and keep the other." I asked why I should sell one. He said, "Your grandparents once saved me. Now they want to buy a house, but don't have enough money." When I told my grandmother, she was surprised. She said my grandfather had indeed been thinking that the house arranged by my second aunt wasn't suitable, and wanted to buy a cheaper one near the sand yard. But my aunt, mother, and uncle couldn't raise the money. It seemed the snake was telling the truth. I followed his instructions and found the place. In a small corner on the first floor, there was a short pomegranate tree. Under it was a broken jar, like one used to collect rainwater. I reached in, afraid that a spider or centipede might jump out. But instead, I pulled out 2 objects. One big and hard, the other smaller and slightly softer. The voice said, "The small one is mine, the big hard one belongs to another snake. These are our elixirs from years of cultivation. They are gifts for you, to thank you." I asked how to sell them, and where to find a buyer. He said someone would come to my grandfather. I took the objects home. My grandfather was a retired doctor, and didn't believe in such things, but he knew some wandering masters. He consulted one of them, who said there happened to be a Shanxi called Boss, who liked collecting strange things. These were valuable medicinal materials and would definitely sell later. The Coal Boss really bought one of them for 300,000 yuan. The snake said he had been reincarnated many times, and even knew what would happen to Teacher Gong's daughter. He told me that I would eventually go to university in Changchun, study international trade and Japanese, and later work in Nagashima, Japan, for 7 years. Teacher Gong's daughter thought her father's death was unfair, and went to a temple to ask a master. The master told her that if she wanted to know why these things were happening, she should look into her past life, and learn to let go. The story is truly bizarre, even now. When I think about it, it feels incredible. The second story was told to me by an older brother I met in the park on a weekend. He was from Hebei and told several strange tales that happened in Chengde. Let me retell them for you. It was around 2000. My parents were getting a divorce. My mom took me from the county back to our hometown to file for divorce in court. We were on a minibus, passing a bend on a mountain road near a cliff, when I saw a very low-hanging cloud. I was wondering about it when suddenly a dragon emerged from the cloud, twisting and turning inside it. The dragon was golden and extremely beautiful. I clearly saw its claws and horns. Its body was very graceful, about 10 meters long and 20 to 30 centimeters thick. I stared at it for more than 10 seconds. It was definitely not an illusion. I quickly pulled my mom and shouted, "Mom, look, a dragon." But just then, the dragon suddenly dove into the mountain and disappeared. It was a clear day. Our area has many mountains, and there was a big pool at the bottom formed by a river. Chengde also has the mountain resort, so I thought maybe this place had strong dragon energy. My mom and the other passengers didn't see anything, because of where I was sitting on those old minibuses. The engine had a big hump inside the vehicle, and I was facing backward while my mom was looking forward. By the time I shouted and everyone turned around, the dragon was already gone. Years later, when I was 18 or 19, I was driving for relatives in the village. One night in late autumn, around 9 o'clock, a worker who worked for my uncle called and asked me to come over to play mahjong, or at least have a drink. I rode my cousin's new motorcycle and set off. There were 2 ways to get there, a main road and a small road. The small road was shorter, but narrow and desolate, so I took that one, traveling from east to west. After passing an intersection, the motorcycle suddenly started to sputter, the headlights went out, and I couldn't shift gears. I thought, this bike is brand new, not even a week old. How could it break down like this? There was no phone signal, the lights were all off, and kicking it didn't help. I was standing there trying to figure it out when I looked north and saw a transformer about 10 meters away. A white figure was floating near it. At first, I thought it was a plastic sheet hanging from somewhere. The wind was very strong, probably force 5 or 6, and had been blowing since I'd reached the intersection. I didn't pay much attention and kept messing with the bike. After a while, I looked north again. This time I saw it clearly. It was a woman dressed in white, very ethereal, floating in midair near the power pole and transformer. Her hair was long, but I couldn't see her facial features clearly. Her hands and feet were visible, and as the wind blew, the white cloth around her fluttered. I stared for a moment. At first, I wasn't scared, but then I thought the motorcycle trouble might be related to her. I started pushing the bike. Since I couldn't shift gears, I just dragged it along. As soon as I passed the intersection, the headlight suddenly turned on, and the bike started right up. When I arrived at the worker's house, I got more and more scared. I thought, did I just see a ghost? Another time, I ran a small building materials store in my hometown's town. One summer, I was supposed to deliver a truckload of goods. It was too hot during the day, so I told the customer I'd deliver at night. I left the store at 7:30. The delivery location was about 40 kilometers away in the mountains, through one valley after another. When I was almost there, I was driving on a very narrow road. On both sides were crops, and the dirt road in the middle was only as wide as my small truck, about 2 to 3 meters. I was driving fast at night since I didn't expect any pedestrians. Suddenly, a wild hare jumped in front of the truck. You should have seen it. Its hind legs were stretched back, front legs forward, and it was as wide as the road, almost 3 meters. At first, I thought it was an elephant, but I'm from the countryside, so I know a hare when I see one. The ears, the fur color, definitely a hare, but it was much bigger than usual, and its fur was a bit yellow. It jumped out when I was only 2 meters away. I was going 50 or 60 kilometers per hour and was about to hit it. I slammed on the brakes and barely avoided it. When I arrived, I told the customer I just saw a huge hare, 2 or 3 meters long. He said, "That's impossible. I've lived here for 50 or 60 years and never seen a rabbit that big." I couldn't help it if he didn't believe me. On the way back home, the truck was almost out of gas, so I stopped at a gas station. I said, "Fill it up." The attendant inserted the nozzle, and as soon as he squeezed it, the pump clicked off. He said, "Your tank is already full." I replied, "That's impossible. I only had a quarter tank when I left, and this round trip must have used it all." He tried again, and it kicked off immediately. I thought it was strange, so I took a flashlight and shone it into the tank. Sure enough, it was almost overflowing with the little bit he had just added. It was about to spill over. I thought, could that hare have filled my tank? I didn't hit it, so maybe it was repaying me with a full tank of gas. No one believes this story, but it really happened to me. The next story, our family maid was born in the 1970s and came from a nearby village. She told me a story from when she was young. A young wife had married into their village from another village. Since they were around the same age, they quickly became good friends. One spring, when the mountain flowers were blooming, several young people decided to go up the mountain to see them. When they reached the foot of the mountain, the young wife suddenly said, "Wait for me, I really need to use the bathroom." But there were no toilets on the mountain, so she found a shady spot behind a tree. After that day, she started having dreams every night about a man, and they did things that can't be described. Day by day, her mental state deteriorated, and her stomach gradually grew bigger. Her mother-in-law noticed something was wrong and asked, "What's wrong with you?" The young wife said, "My stomach hurts. I don't feel well." Her mother-in-law quickly said, "Let's go see a doctor." They went to the hospital, and after an examination, the doctor said there was nothing seriously wrong, just indigestion, and prescribed some medicine. But the medicine didn't help, and she became even more listless. Her mother-in-law thought there was more to it. People in the village believed in supernatural things, so she invited an old lady who knew some magic to take a look. The old lady took one look and exclaimed in shock, "Child, if you had come a few days later, I wouldn't have been able to save you. Something on the mountain has taken a fancy to your essence and blood. Think carefully. What have you been doing?" The young wife then remembered going to the bathroom behind that shady tree on the mountain. The old lady told her, "Go back to that place. When you get there, move the grass aside. There must be something under it. No matter what you see, smash it to death with a stone." She then said, "Wait a moment. I'll prepare some medicine for you." She wrote a talisman and mixed some ingredients, then told the mother-in-law, "Come back tomorrow to get it. I need to make it into pills." And next day, the young wife and her mother-in-law went back to the shady tree on the mountain. The young wife moved the grass and saw a large centipede lying there. She gritted her teeth and smashed it to death with a stone. Later, they picked up the medicine from the old lady, who told her how to take it. After taking the medicine, the young wife started passing black water from her stomach, which smelled terrible. After that, her health gradually improved. Another story. This story was told to me by a college classmate from Hernan. In our dorm, there weren't many only children. She said that in the early 1990s, everyone loved watching Journey to the West *, and during the Chinese New Year, it was popular to print New Year paintings based on the show. Her younger brother especially liked those paintings, and bought one to put on the wall. They slept on a big cairn in the countryside, and one of the paintings was of a beautiful female demon from Journey to the West *. Every night, her brother would stare at the painting and joke, "Sis, look how beautiful she is. I want to marry someone that pretty in the future." She laughed at him, saying, "You are only a kid, and you are already thinking about marrying someone." But slowly, she noticed that her brother was acting strange. He became listless, had no energy, and kept staring at the painting. She felt something was wrong, and told her grandmother, "Grandma, there's something wrong with little brother. He stares at that painting every night, has no energy, and doesn't want to eat." Her grandmother asked the boy, "Dear grandson, tell Grandma, have you encountered something?" He replied, "Grandma, nothing happened. I just think that painting on the wall is beautiful. The woman in it smiles at me every night." Her grandmother immediately understood. She climbed onto the cairn and tore the painting off the wall. My classmate said she saw the painting turn into a wisp of white smoke and float away. The next story, in July 2024, an extremely tragic and bizarre incident occurred. A mentally ill patient ran away from the hospital and returned home without his family knowing. Once home, he took a watermelon knife and attacked his mother, killing her. Pieces of watermelon were scattered all over the floor. We didn't know about the case until 5 days later, when it was exposed. We went to the scene and found the entire house in chaos. By the battlefield, the young man had hanged himself on the 3rd floor. A whole family was almost wiped out, with only a younger sister, who was away in another city surviving. It was summer, and the room was filled with a strong smell. Based on surveillance footage and other clues, we recorded the details in our notebooks, because the case was major and urgent. A colleague from the city was sent to assist us, plus 3 local colleagues, making 4 of us working overtime to sort through the materials. We worked until nearly 2 in the morning, hungry and exhausted. We decided to go out for a late night snack. The store was only 200 or 300 meters away. After finishing our main dishes and starting on some skewers, we noticed an old man sitting on a tall wall next to the sidewalk. He was wearing an old green military uniform and staring at us. Beside him was a woven bag filled with bottles and cans. At first, he was staring intently at one of the girls in our group. After she finished her drink, we thought he wanted the empty bottle, so we had her collect all the empty cans and give them to him. But even after that, he kept staring at us. We thought he might be hungry, so we asked the boss to make him a plate of fried noodles. He ate it, but still kept staring. I couldn't help but ask, "Uncle, why are you staring at us? Is there something wrong?" We were all in plain clothes, but he asked, "Are you 4 police officers?" I was surprised and replied, "How did you know?" He looked at me and said, "Young man, I see a person standing behind this little girl, about how old he is, what he looks like." Then he proceeded to describe the appearance of a male victim in the case we were investigating, including details like his double eyelids and eyebrows. We were chilled to the bone. We quickly pulled him over to our table and said, "Uncle, whatever you want to eat or drink, we'll treat you. Please tell us how you know all this." He said, "I can see you are all police officers, and I know you are good people, so I'm helping you. I'm not staring at you eating, I'm staring at that thing behind you." I asked, "How do you know there's something behind us?" He replied, "You don't need to tell me what happened. I can tell you the whole story. There was a man in his 30s with mental illness who hurt his family. How many people were in the family, and so on. He described the entire case in perfect detail and warned me, "You need to be careful recently. You were having a run of bad luck." I was astonished. We didn't let him leave and kept asking, "Uncle, just tell us what we should do to protect ourselves." He smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. I'll take care of this for you today. But remember, it's not because you met me that this is happening. It's because you've done many good deeds that I appeared." Then he took out 2 lighters and lit a small flame above each of our heads. Instantly, we didn't feel as cold anymore when we finished eating and were about to leave. We thanked him and said we'd look for him again. But he waved his hand and said, "You won't be able to find me if fate allows it. I'll come to you." We didn't believe him at the time. We thought, the whole street is covered with cameras. How could we not find him? The next day, a colleague with higher clearance checked the surveillance. In the footage, there was only a dark blur where the old man should have been. His face was completely indistinct, but our 4 figures eating were perfectly clear. Later, when we reviewed the case, everything he had said matched exactly. But no matter how hard we tried to find him, he was gone, disappeared without a trace, dragging his garbage bag behind him. Now, looking back, it's really mysterious. I often wonder, was he truly a master, or some other kind of supernatural being? From what we saw in the surveillance, his eyes were bright yet empty. He claimed to be 90 years old, but he looked only 50 or 60. He was truly unfathomable. The snake girl of Yaji Mountain. Many years ago, there was a 13-year-old girl who had lived a normal life, riding her bike to and from school every day. But one day, she came home a little late and began to act strangely. At first, she had a low-grade fever and muttered nonsense. Gradually, her condition worsened. She became extremely afraid of light and liked to curl up in dark corners. Eventually, she stopped walking normally and instead slithered on the ground like a snake, making hissing sounds similar to a python. Whenever someone got close, she would suddenly lunge and bite wildly, terrifying the villagers. They whispered that she was possessed by a snake spirit and had become a snake girl. Her family was distraught and sought medical help everywhere, taking her to hospitals and inviting doctors to their home. But nothing worked. Finally, her mother spent a large sum of money to invite a master in his 40s from another city. That day, the girl was hiding in a corner near the chicken coop in the yard. When the master pushed open the gate and entered, she sensed someone coming and looked back. There was a tall jujube tree in the yard. The girl moved incredibly quickly, slithering up the tree like a snake, all the way to the neighbor's wall, and lay on a branch, staring back at the master. Her agility was exactly like a snake's. The master shook his head and said to her mother, "I can't cure your daughter. Don't waste your time looking for others. It won't help. Do you know Yaji Mountain? Take her there. Maybe the Taoist priestesses there can help her." With that, he left. The mother had no other choice. After arranging her affairs, she took her daughter and traveled to Yaji Mountain. Strangely, as soon as the car entered the Yaji Mountain area, the girl woke up and said, "Mom, I want to drink water." Her mother was overjoyed and quickly gave her some water. After reaching the foot of the mountain, the mother found a place to stay, then took her daughter up the mountain. Once they arrived, the girl completely recovered. She could talk normally and walk upright like everyone else. Her mother thought she was cured and took her to the bus to go home. But as soon as the bus left the Yaji Mountain area, the girl became confused again and collapsed on the floor, unable to walk. Her mother had no choice but to bring her back to Yaji Mountain. After returning, the girl recovered once more. In the end, the mother rented a small house at the foot of Yaji Mountain, so her daughter could stay there. As the girl grew older and the mother aged, she had to travel back and forth to take care of her. Today, the girl is in her 40s and still lives at the foot of Yaji Mountain, leading a life of green lanterns beside an ancient Buddha. She still cannot leave that area, otherwise she reverts to her abnormal state. The person who told me this story was a neighbor from Lusong town, who lived near the girl's family. After hearing it, I was very curious and searched online for Snake Girl. I found similar cases in the news. A little girl was also afraid of light, liked to hide in corners, and crawled instead of walking. The news concluded that she suffered from a psychological disorder that caused her abnormal behavior. Later, when the storyteller came to my store, I showed him the news and asked if it was the same girl from their village. He said the situation seemed similar, but the girl he knew moved completely differently. The girl in the news crawled very slowly, but the one in their village moved extremely fast. She could climb walls and trees with incredible speed. The Yaji mountain mentioned here is probably Yaji mountain in Pinghu, Beijing, a famous Taoist mountain with temples dedicated to Taoist priestesses. It is said that it is their protection that allows the girl to remain normal within the Yaji mountain area. The next story, at the end of November, a series of terrifying events happened in my younger brother's dormitory. It all started in October. There was a classmate in his dorm with a very sharp tongue, always saying cruel things and even cursing people. It was autumn, which is said to be the season with the strongest killing energy. People believe that words spoken during this time have more power and can even come true. One day, my brother and this sharp-tongued roommate were riding an electric scooter from south to north to a mall for dinner. 2 other roommates had already arrived on another scooter because the sharp-tongued roommate had a girlfriend. They had been fooling around until after 5 o'clock before leaving. About 5 kilometers from the school, a food delivery rider came toward them. My brother saw him and braked suddenly, but the rider, probably looking at his phone, didn't notice them and crashed into them. Falling to the ground, my brother put his hand out to brace himself and got a minor scrape, while the sharp-tongued roommate hit his head and started bleeding heavily. At first, the rider thought the roommate wasn't seriously injured and gave my brother his phone number, saying, "Sorry, brother, I'll come back as soon as I finish this delivery. Don't leave." My brother was still in shock, but the roommate hugged his head and started shouting insults. "Are you crazy? Can't you drive? What the hell is wrong with you?" When he saw the rider leave, he shouted, "I hope you get hit and die at the next intersection." No one expected that the rider really was hit by a large truck at the next intersection and killed instantly. The roommate had only been venting, not thinking his words would have such serious consequences. But in early November, the roommate suddenly started bleeding from his nose while sleeping. He went to the hospital and was diagnosed with mid-stage leukemia. The school launched crowdfunding campaigns to help him. After that, he had nightmares every night. In the dreams, the delivery rider said to him, "Your words sent me to the underworld early. No matter what, I'm going to drag you down with me." He stayed in the hospital for more than 10 days and passed away on the night of November the 29th. My brother was very scared at the end of November. He called me in a panic and said, "Brother, I think I saw that classmate sitting on my bed while I was sleeping." I quickly comforted him, "Stay in the dorm. I'll contact someone for you. Call him and ask him to come over." Later, the master I contacted went to the school. It turned out that even though the roommate had died, his spirit seemed to think he was still alive and had returned to the dorm 2 nights earlier to haunt my brother. We couldn't tell the school there was a ghost in the dorm, so it was a difficult situation. I told my brother to take a few days off and go home. My father went to pick him up, and after returning home, he didn't experience any more strange occurrences. Later, I asked the master to perform some calming rituals for my brother. When my brother went back to the dorm, he was still in disbelief when he saw the roommate's death certificate. In the end, we had to ask the master to perform a soul-releasing ceremony, and the matter was finally resolved. These events really serve as a warning. No matter when it is, we should be careful with our words. Don't casually say cruel things, especially at certain times. Words like "I hope you die" can have unexpected and severe consequences. Just like in this story, it's really frightening to think about. The next story. When I was a junior at a university in Xi'an, I lived in a 6-person dorm. When you walked in, there were 3 beds on the left and 3 on the right. Xi'an is hot for a long time, and there are many mosquitoes. So we all use square mosquito nets tucked under the edges of our beds. I have a problem. I can't sleep in new places. Every night I wouldn't fall asleep until 1 or 2 o'clock. Around 4 in the morning one day, the girl sleeping across from me shook me awake and said, "Ziobai, something is pulling my pillow. Can you talk to me? I'm scared." I asked drowsily what time it was. She said it was past 4. I told her, "Honey, we have class at 8. Go to sleep." I fell back asleep, but I vaguely heard her calling her boyfriend, saying she was scared and asking him to talk to her. The next morning, during a big lecture, we sat at the back of the auditorium. I asked her what had happened. She said, "Don't be afraid." But I suddenly woke up at around 4 and heard someone walking back and forth on the dorm floor. Then they opened each of our small wardrobes, like they were changing clothes. After that, they walked around the room twice, and finally opened the door and left. I thought she must have been dreaming and comforted her, but she insisted she had been awake and heard everything clearly. She was really scared. A few nights later, I got up to go to the bathroom around midnight. The bathroom was inside the dorm and was quite nice. with a sink and a shower. I took a rechargeable lamp with me. When I came back and was climbing into bed, I saw a very ugly, long-haired face in the corner of my eye through the mosquito net. I was so scared my whole body broke out in goosebumps. I immediately shone my flashlight outside the net, but the face was gone. I thought I must have been mistaken. After all, it was out of the corner of my eye, and through the mosquito net. I climbed into bed, tucked the net in, and tried to sleep. Around 1 o'clock, I heard a very slow, tearing sound like paper being crumpled, coming from below the beds. It reminded me instantly of what my friend had said about footsteps. I was terrified. My sheets and quilt were soaked with cold sweat. I tossed and turned until around 5 in the morning, when I finally managed to doze off a little. The next morning, I told my roommates about the sound. 2 of the girls from Xi'an were so scared they went home to live, and another went to stay with her boyfriend, that left only Xiaodao, Leoda, and me in the dorm. I slept on the middle bunk on the left, Xiaodao on the middle bunk on the right, and Leoda near the balcony. Both of them were atheists. Xiaodao got up to run every morning between 5 and 6, no matter the weather. Another night, around 1 o'clock, I was about to turn off my MP4 and go to sleep. When the MP4 turned off, there was a flash of light. At that moment, I heard Xiaodao calling me in a tearful voice, "Xiaobai, Xiaobai, Xiaobai." My heart was about to jump out of my chest. I turned on my flashlight at the same time as Leoda. Xiaodao sat up and burst into tears, saying, "Something patted me." I asked if it was an illusion. She cried, "No, I sleep early and get up early. 1 o'clock is when I'm sound asleep. Something patted me 3 times in a row. Twice she asked me to come sleep in her bed, but I was afraid there was something under the bed and didn't dare get down. In the end, she grabbed her pillow and went to squeeze into Leoda's bed. I told Leoda not to turn off her phone at night because we were all scared. She agreed, cursed a few times, and told me to turn off the flashlight because it was keeping her awake. I turned it off, but I was too scared to sleep, so I buried my head under the covers. After about 20 minutes, Leoda called me again. I turned on the flashlight, and she quickly said, "It's okay, it's okay. Keep the flashlight on, don't turn it off again." We stayed up like that all night. The next day, we were all exhausted. I asked Leoda what had happened. She said after Xiaodao cried and climbed into her bed. She cursed a few times and was just falling asleep when someone knocked on the iron railing of her bed. Bang, bang, bang. She didn't pay much attention. Then she dreamed that a long-haired woman was holding her arm and dragging her from the upper bunk toward the balcony. She felt like she was about to fall, so she shouted my name and woke up. The 6 of us discussed what to do in our QQ group. A classmate from Beoji, Shanxi, said that Taoism was very popular there. She had asked a master before, who told her that Shanxi produces a lot of pomegranates, and pomegranate juice is good for warding off evil. There were also peach branches on campus. She suggested we bring them back to clean the dorm, and said that listening to Buddhist songs in the dorm might have attracted something unclean. So we went to find peach branches and pomegranate juice. That evening, Xiaodao and I were in the dorm. I was eating and looking for a movie to watch, planning to wash the dishes on the balcony after eating. Suddenly, Xiaodao ran over, snatched my bowl, threw it on the desk, and dragged me out. I almost fell. I asked her what was wrong. She cried, "When I was washing the dishes, I glanced towards you and saw a woman standing next to you, long hair, head hanging down. When I looked again, she was gone." Leoda had gone to visit a friend at another school, so it was just the 2 of us. I remembered that before I left for university, my father had given me a protective golden card with a picture of Ksitagaba Buddha, which he had asked for from Wutai Mountain. I took it out of my wallet and placed it next to my pillow. We turned on all the flashlights in the dorm and stayed up all night with our eyes open. The next day, we quickly went to the peach orchard on campus and broke off many branches. We also got some pomegranate juice. When we passed the dorm supervisor's room, Aunt Song saw the peach branches in our hands and asked what we were doing. I told her everything that had happened in the dorm and said we hadn't been able to sleep for days and were exhausted. Her response scared me. She asked, "Do you have any other things? I have something here I can give you." It felt like she knew the building was unclean. We went back to the dorm and used willow branches, pomegranate branches, and peach juice to sweep the room with the door open. We also muttered that we had no grudges against that thing and asked it not to scare us anymore. Half a month later, one evening, we had class at 6:30. At around 5:30, I suddenly felt extremely sleepy. Everyone was crowded at the dorm door, watching asterisk raise the red lantern asterisk starring Gonley. I said I wanted to take a nap and asked them to wake me at 6. They agreed. In my dream, the scene was the same. Everyone was crowded at the door watching the movie. The dorm door was open, and a woman crawled in from under the door, just like Sadako from asterisk the ring asterisk. She crawled to the door, looked up, and stared at me with a blood-covered face. I woke up with a start. After that, nothing strange happened in the dorm again. That was my own personal terrifying experience. That's the end of today's story. If you have folk tales you'd like to hear, leave them in the comments. I am PickTalk, and I'll see you next time.